I have been playing Call of Duty Zombies for a long time. This, I'm sure, is a sentiment that is shared amongst many people born in the Xbox 360 PS3 era of gaming. A time where the novelty of hopping online with a headset gave way to night after night of zombie-killing carnage. Call of Duty Zombies was one of these social gaming staples that transcended the games themselves, and arguably soared higher than their multiplayer and campaign counterparts. Zombies has created an entire online culture of appreciation, nostalgia, and debate on which remains to be the greatest zombie maps, and which are laughable novelties that have to be seen to be believed. Looking back on Zombies, it's easy to remember the mode through rose-tinted glasses. People have extremely loaded arguments when discussing the quality of Zombies, and how well that the maps stack up with each other. Additionally, the discourse of Zombies, particularly on YouTube, in the form of map reviews and tier list videos, can cloud and filter the evaluation. I don't hold myself to any higher standard in this regard. As you will see in this video, my opinions are biased in favour of my own values and preferences when it comes to gaming, and I don't intend to posit this critique as the be-all end-all of zombie rankings. However, what I can do is offer a more rigorous form of analysis. What I intend to do in this video is to put these fan favourite maps under the scalpel and determine whether or not the great maps deserve to be called great, whether a bad map deserves to be called bad. Because this is a Zombies video on YouTube, I'll be presenting this critique in ascending order of quality, starting with the worst Zombies offering and rising to the best. This exercise remains to be extremely subjective. However, I do believe that there can be objectivity found within by asking a fundamental question. That question is, does the map achieve its intended goal? Some maps are a far cry from their intended purpose, whereas some are brilliant achievements in design where the developers struck gold and made a fluid and engaging masterpiece. I often get annoyed when certain maps are judged harshly because they're too simple or bare bones. It simply isn't fair to compare a map like Shadows of Evil with a map like Nacht Der Untoten if your bar of comparison is how many features are available to the player. My analysis will go as follows. How well does Shadows of Evil and Nacht Der Untoten achieve their intended design objectives? This criteria might cause alarm amongst you when you discover where I've placed certain maps. I will of course say that at the end of the day, this is my opinion, so please don't be disheartened if your favourite map is far down the list or not at number 1. Before we start the analysis, I want to outline some things first. What do I mean by classic zombies? Many YouTubers have stated a golden era of zombies, or maybe even a modern era of zombies. However, what actually is a classic zombies map? To me, it holds two criteria. The map falls between the release time of 2008 and 2019 and is distinctly a Treyarch offering. This means that we'll be covering all the maps from World at War and Black Ops 1 all the way to Black Ops 4. The Chaos maps will be included, as well as the Ether remasters in Black Ops 4. There will be no remakes or additional remasters, with the exception of one. More on that later. Exo Zombies, Infinite Warfare Zombies, and World War II Zombies will not be included. This stretch of maps, to me, remains to be the classic era of zombies. Anything post-Cold War I'll refer to as modern zombies, to which I'll be making a separate critique on. The classic era of zombies has a special place in history. Each map was a statement and progression of the mode. World at War was an era of additions to the building blocks of zombies, forming conventions that would stick in the mode for years to come. Black Ops 1 and 2 saw vast experimentation and a changeover in development styles, transitioning from chaotic fun to quest-based progression. Black Ops 3 saw the maturation of this quest formula, with production values reaching staggering heights. Black Ops 4 attempted to change core game mechanics, and, while stumbling, found its feet in a new story and a deeper explorative playstyle. Not to mention, Black Ops 4 remains to be a swan song to the Ethercast and a celebration of Zombies history, despite the maps being of mixed quality. The maps that followed Black Ops 4 in Cold War, Vanguard, Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops 6 are different in terms of their objective. They're more vessels to level up weapons and max out rounds in a very competitive and arena-like atmosphere. The design philosophy of modern Zombies differs from classic, as it doesn't pertain to the depth and mystery of the earlier maps. The multiplayerification of Zombies has seen disappointment after disappointment, and is more of a test of how much endurance the COD Zombies community can put up with before admitting that the developers are simply putting in the least amount of effort for the highest gain. I do play these maps from time to time. However, there's just no comparison in returning to classic Zombies. Whether it be running an entire Easter egg, reaching a high round, or simply trying to survive in that lonely bunker known as Nacht Der Untoten, there is magic in these early maps that demands further analysis. However, classic Zombies is far from perfect and has faltered over the years. So, without further ado, here are my thoughts on classic Zombies. Black Ops 2 launched with 4 survival maps. Bus Depot was a sparse and nightmarish challenge designed to test the player on their training skills. Town and Nuketown Zombies were more developed experiences that were simple, fun playgrounds for new players to grasp the mode and obtain a soft introduction to Zombies mechanics. And then there's Farm, which appeals to nobody and is a complete waste of time. It's too easy for hardcore players, too tight for new players, casuals will get bored after 5 minutes since the zombie spawns are laughably slow, there aren't any training spots, nor camping spots, no new perks, wonder weapons, and no fun gimmicks. There just isn't anything. Just play another map. Why doesn't Alpha Omega work? It's a question that's seen me rewrite this paragraph for a third time, as my original analysis was short, undeveloped, and written in a tone of, ugh, do we have to talk about this map? I can't quite put my finger on why this map is so unappetizing, so hostile to any enjoyment. Surely I should be able to go on a lengthy rant of why I hate this map, but in the words of Todd in the Shadows, the worst map isn't the most bad, it's the least good. This map is like a disappointing meal that serves the purpose of nutrition, but might give you stomach pains the night after. For starters, I was already turned off by the map's premise. Who even asked for a Nuketown Zombies reimagining? Was this a map that was being sung to the rafters to be remastered? Where's the Nuketown remaster? Where is it? They cried. Oh wait, they didn't. This map was a huge disappointment for the second to last Ether map in the franchise. The penultimate experience to the story we'd all grown to love was a messy cavalcade of annoying layouts, reused assets, dreary round change music, uninspired wonder weapons, tedious side quests, and a backwards atmosphere that looks like a discount Fallout New Vegas. Maybe in another timeline, Treyarch nailed this map on its design, and Zombies was left with one last good Ether map before ending to the modern era. I fail to see this alternate universe. This genuinely feels like a rushed custom map, only to warrant 1, maybe even 2 playthroughs at most. There is no greater example of a map that represents the microcosmic tedium of the Zombies game mode more than TranZit. The mechanics of the map almost serve as a detriment, not only to the flow of the game, but to the player's well-being and sanity. It's a real shame because this map posits great ideas in practice, but failed in its execution due to the hardware limitations and the lead developer of Jimmy Zielinski pushing his philosophy of chaos to its absolute limit. Take for example the premise of the map, a large expansive open world which the player is free to explore. The only catch is that said exploration is punished with limited visibility and unrelenting attacks of denizens. Additionally, the map has one of the highest value damage wonder weapons that doesn't even take up a weapon slot. The only catch is the parts are disparately and carelessly tossed around the map, and the weapon will disappear if the player dares to have fun with it. Whilst playing the map, you start to imagine the possibility of maybe the map is bad because of the archaic item carrying system. Maybe it would have been better in Cold War's engine, or even Black Ops 3's engine. However, you start to realise that this map's fatal flaw is its lack of polish and due care and attention. Why is a breakable buildable the tool to access one of the most important aspects of the map, Pack-a-Punch? Why is there lava lakes in the most inconvenient places? Why is there a bus that seems to be working against you in regards to its timing and convenience? Why is the avocado boss fight so underwhelming? I admit the challenge of training in the diner with no jug to save for Galvanuckles, which are basically meta by the way, is a fun endeavour. However, it only caters to one specific build and one specific strategy. Any deviance from this strategy and you are in for a frustrating and nauseating experience. Any enjoyment of this map is on an ironic level. I really don't have much to say about Voyage of Despair. I would rather write a paragraph about the more interesting topic of this map's setting of the Titanic, which is this map's only really excelling feature. The detail of the boat with all the corridors and avenues, Easter eggs and nods to the existing ship is truly incredible. However, the aesthetics of the map might as well be window dressing, an interchangeable overlay to an otherwise dull experience. The zombies formula had been done to death in Black Ops 3, and in Black Ops 4, they attempt to replicate it with inferior difficulty scaling, a more convoluted progression system, and a regression in storytelling that puts Saturday morning cartoons ahead of it in terms of depth. Although the opening cutscene is impressive, Scarlet Rhodes is a boring shell of a protagonist, and the chaos story elements were delivered in such a confusing way. Underwhelming would be the best descriptor for this map, from the wonder weapon to the features of the atmosphere. The boss especially is the most forgettable aspect. Could you even remember the name of the boss? Because I couldn't. The map does contain some merits, such as the poop deck is a sufficient training spot, the swimming mechanic is neat, and the Pack-a-Punch quest is satisfying. However, high rounds on this map are plagued with alternative zombie types and an increased zombie speed, making stamina up in the modifier slot pretty much a necessity. If you're looking for an interesting zombies experience, don't come here. It isn't an exciting voyage, it's just a dull old people cruise. I find the existence of Nacht Der Toten to be immensely frustrating and melancholic, much like the feelings of the zombies community on the release of this map. If I were to time travel back to 2013, just after the release of Origins, and reveal the ending to the Ether storyline, when they discover it's a Call of the Dead remake with the TranZit crew, they'd have a swift laugh of dismissal, which is very much in order. I get nothing from this map, despite the conviction of certain friends of mine which would tell me to give it another chance. Whenever I play this map, it's like I'm holding my nose as I push the broccoli into my mouth because my mum told me to just try it, only to retain the grimace on my face as I spit it right back out again. Nacht Der Toten is a shell of Call of the Dead. It retains none of the excitement of George Romero, none of the fun factor of the wonder weapons held, and simply exists as a symbol of Black Ops 4's rush development hell. The new areas are a facility on a mountain, and an island where I can fully pack-a-punch my weapon once. Great, a resolution to a problem that was never an issue in the older games, and was already existed as a bonfire sale. Nacht Der Toten represents a sad era in zombies, a time of creative bankruptcy, and a lazy corporate lie to convince us that there was a plan all along. I wish I had more to say about this map, I really did. Blood of the Dead experienced one of the biggest nosedives of engagement the zombie community had ever seen. The trailer promised a faithful remaster with an expanse of new depth in the story. This was, in theory, what was delivered, but its failings were in execution, not concept. Much like Nacht Der Toten, Blood of the Dead is a near replica of its predecessor. The player will find themselves wrapped up in the same rhythms of a Mob of the Dead game, but the parts placed elsewhere only for the sake of inconvenience. The Easter egg is an achievement in tediousness, and the Magma Gat is a confusing attempt at resurrecting an already flawless wonder weapon in concept. The map's design lends itself to an endless feeling of disappointment, a black hole of player retention. You're sitting there on the edge of your seat thinking, where are the new areas? There has to be more to this map. your faith is grossly misplaced. The only time you will ever explore something new is the level of frustration you'll feel trying to chase down the Pack-a-Punch machine. Instead, the innovative afterlife system, the main progression of the map, comes from a spectral shield, a still baffling piece of ludology that has never resurfaced since. There exists little reason to play Blood of the Dead, besides story reasons and sheer boredom. If you wish for a hellish reincarnation of Alcatraz, you're most likely looking for this map's progenitor. This doesn't create a sense of mythical dread. The gates are open, you're free to leave, when you wish, via the gift shop. It's simply a tourist attraction. With complete honesty, I am in two minds whether to even include this map in the video. Black Ops 4 would include 4 reimaginings of classic maps, with new additions and areas, a complete overhaul of the map's playstyle and aesthetic. Black Ops 1 included 4 remasters of classic maps, which were faithful as ever, changing only weapon arsenals, zombie AI, and fixing any pervasive bugs. These remasters are not included in this list, as well as the Zombie Chronicles versions of the maps, as it would bloat the list and invite unnecessary comparisons between the different versions that rob from the core analysis of this video. I have included the Giant, however, for the simple reason that I feel like the Giant robs Der Reise of nearly all of its charm and difficulty. The guns are far too powerful for such a simple map, and the zombie AI, as well as the 3-hit system, makes for a monotonous, dull experience. I give credit where it's due, however. The opening cutscene is incredible, but I hardly count that as being congruent to the map experience, since the map is so reified in favour of evoking nostalgia for Der Reise. Additionally, this was the first instance of the main characters affecting the multiverse and rewriting history, a narrative decision that clouded and depersonalized the Primus crew into obscurity. There is little that I gained from playing the Giant, and the experience was better represented all the way back in 2009, where the original horrors of Group 935 took place. The Giant feels like an empty husk, an end credits scene, where the zombies just happened to invade upon the characters for the game-to-narrative ludology to even make sense. There are defenders of this map, who argue of its atmosphere and hidden Easter eggs. I'm yet to see how it redeems the map from the core flaw of being too easy and just unappetizing. Shi No Numa is often discussed in retrospect as the necessary stepping stone in zombie development. It was the transition into a new playstyle of zombies. One less of letting the zombies come to you, but you manipulating them thanks to the newfound space available. The concept of kiting or training was a fresh addition to gameplay. However, much of the praise that Shi No Numa receives is inherently parasitic due to the community's inventive spirit. The map simply offered expanded space. Perhaps the addition of the Wunderwaffe makes the map more admirable. However, this map cannot hide from the fact that its design is genuinely dull. The mundanity of opening every building to reveal a perk is a chore that puts me off playing this map every time. The atmosphere is serviceable, yet failed to capture the horror that the previous map offered. This was a time where Zombies was a terrifying game mode. It was competing with the likes of Left 4 Dead, Jericho, and Dead Space. Zombies was the game you played whilst peeking out from behind your couch. It had yet to see the advancements into sci-fi, steampunk, and pure fantasy. This map remains to be the outlier, with the other 3 offering much more exciting alternatives for the era. It's not a bad map by any stretch of the imagination. Players can exploit the rustic mechanics of World at War to achieve staggering round numbers, with Shi No Numa holding stupefying world records reaching the thousands. Again, however, the map's praise is built on what the players can exploit from it, rather than what the map can do for the player. It's an all take and no give. The map's description describes the maggot fly-ridden corpses that lurk around the bunkers. Shi No Numa is much like a corpse, with the players being the flies, plucking and pillaging for their own nutrition, and then sinking into the mulch. Revelations is where the franchise reached its referential peak. It is reliant so heavily on previous assets and ideas that the map is sometimes discounted as even being an original Ether map. Dr. Monty highlights via dialogue, the universe is practically held together with tape. This serves as a perfect metaphor for the development this map received. It's a rushed school report where the student copy and pastes material that his older siblings created when they did the assignment years ago. It's a mess. The map disappointed fans on release and confirmed their suspicions that Black Ops 3 was a downward slope of unoriginality. Even the map's weapons are borrowed from previous maps. The Apothecon Servant and Thundergun are fine. In fact, they are more than fine, and they are extremely powerful and offer the casual player opportunities to get to those high rounds. However, it's clear that the team's passion and creativity was strangled by deadlines and quotas put forth by the higher-ups at Activision. You can imagine the big boss saying, "Haven't you wrapped this silly space map up yet? We've got another game to make." Much like Nacht Der Toten, there is a melancholy to this map, which emphasises that zombies just ain't what it used to be, and that we're all fools for committing to it for so long. On the first playthrough, players will be overwhelmed with nostalgia as the maps are brought and collided with one another. But once this novelty wears off, however, they are forced to see the map as a whole. They are required to look beyond the mask of self-reference and discover what the map really uncovers. Such efforts are futile at best. What players are left with is a collection of easy training areas coupled with the most powerful arsenal a map has ever seen. The developers threw us a bone, and we just ate it up. Abbey Road is considered one of the best Beatles albums, alongside the other classics. The final track is called Her Majesty, and is a 23-second acoustic number about the then Queen of England. It serves its purpose perfectly, doesn't intrude, and is entirely itself. And I feel the same way about Bus Depot, which receives far too much criticism from the community, despite Nacht being pretty much the same map, just with more ambience. How can a map with a box, some war weapons, and a nice open area to practice training be so offensive to people? This map isn't trying to be anything more than it is. Simple. Yet its simplicity is part of the overwhelming challenge factor that this map can potentiate. This map is fucking difficult. Not Origins difficult, but more like Flappy Bird difficult, for anyone who remembers that. If you play this map, then you will become a better zombie player, hands down. You will become better at understanding pathing, manipulation, zombie speed, and ammo economy better than any map ever could. The poverty of tools available means that it necessitates skill and movement over map knowledge and opening up a Mr. Waffles tutorial to acquire the godlike wonder weapon that makes you basically invincible. It's all on you, and it's thrilling, especially with multiple players. If you've fallen victim to the map tier lists that say that this map is too basic or too bare bones to be taken seriously, then grab yourself a ticket and enjoy the ride. Classified shines above any other Black Ops 4 remakes due to the fact that it's a lot more faithful to the original in a non-derivative way. It doesn't insist upon itself. It's the most casual experience found in Black Ops 4. The simple building mechanics and easy training areas are a welcome addition to the self-seriousness of the other Ether maps present in Black Ops 4. Unfortunately, this is kind of where the praise ends in terms of the map's qualities. The map is creative and fun, but doesn't offer anything past a casual experience that is better replicated on other maps. It's almost like the developers were going to make an expansive experience, but gave up halfway through. Classified's enjoyment has little to do with the map's features, and more of the design decisions of 5 that were implemented nearly a decade ago from the map's release. I enjoy training in the Pentagon, I enjoy descending in the elevators, I enjoy zipping around the map in teleporters. But does this sound familiar to you? Classified, much like the rest of the Black Ops 4 Ether maps, doesn't offer anything new. It's simply nothing more than a bonus experience. I have a distinct fondness for this map, and that's despite of the lack of features on offer. When Black Ops 2 released, the community was simply after more zombies from Black Ops 1. The quality of maps didn't really matter, as they later discovered in the case of TranZit. People resurrected and started putting multiple hours into town, farm and bus depot. And then there was Nuketown, which I believe to be the second best survival map offering in Black Ops 2. The core survival gameplay in this map is at its strongest here. It is a true test of zombie players' skill. The random perks often get criticised, and I can see why. Players are often reliant on core game mechanics in order to create a streamlined experience of immersion. In Nuketown, however, these game mechanics are flipped on their head and allow for a much more challenging and engaging experience. Having to survive in a map with no jug until round 25, and having that be an intrinsic feature of the map and not a self-imposed challenge, is bafflingly hilarious. Long gone are the days of this experimentation, and I miss it. I wish the Zombies team would make a Zombies map hard again. There's a staggering lack of difficulty in modern Zombies, and the spirit of Nuketown would ignite the Zombies community once more. All things considered, however, the spirit of Nuketown cannot save it from its lack of features and bare-bones nature. This is a map to be played sparingly. Its fission causes abnormal growths in ability, but too much radiation can be dangerous. I want to remind the viewer of this video what constitutes a map feature in regards to its introduction. In the Verrukt section of this video, I will mention the addition of perks despite them being a staple of Zombies from that point. The same precedent is set by critics and commentators in regards to Pack-a-Punch with Reise, the Ultimus crew with Shi No Numa, buildables with TranZit, and 4 elemental wonder weapons with Origins. Many ranking videos have stated their merit for certain maps is based on what they introduced to the series. For example, Mob of the Dead brought brand new scope of story and cinema into Zombies. The series has necessary moments of growth, and the maps that signal those pivot points have always remained some of the greatest maps of all time. With all of this in mind, let me list the features that Nacht Der Untoten introduced to Zombies. Zombies, repairable barriers, points, the starting pistol, wall buys, explodable barrels, the max ammo, double points, insta-kill and nuke power-ups, buyable doors, the mystery box, the music Easter eggs, and the ray gun. Now, many will take offence to this conclusion, claiming that they aren't features if the mode didn't exist beforehand. I see this argument as clear as day. We're talking about the basic fundamental entities of what makes zombies zombies. However, it is the synergy of these elements that makes the mode so addicting, compelling, mysterious, and, well, simply fun. Call of Duty Zombies was made out of the scrap pieces left on the cutting room floor of the World at War campaign, and it's the rock and roll spirit of this map that makes it so endearing. It's the stories of the developers that used to exchange their highest rounds in the lunchroom, and the frightening tales of players discovering the game mode for the first time in 2008. Once more, the map has genuine vision and an objective which is seen within its design. This objective is to terrify the player. Nacht is often cited to be the scariest zombie map, which is more than justified. I used to run home from my friend's house because of the sound of the foreboding groans and hisses the zombies used to make, which would send chills up my spine. The laugh at the beginning of the map used to make me especially piss my pants. I would always remember a time when I was at a childminder's house after school. There was an especially delinquent kid who went there who brought his PS3 round with World at War. He was playing it in the living room, and I was just trying to downplay how scared I was of the horrible yellowed-eyed monsters on screen. We would sit at the dinner table one night, and across the table he would whisper to me, "We're gonna play Nazi Zombies after tea." And I just remember my heart sinking to the floor. No map has ever made me feel like this. For Treyarch's first map in the series, this map deserves merit for what it is. I've seen people describe this map as basic, boring, just a bunker, a box map, a starter map, a map that's aged poorly. You're playing it wrong. Turn the lights off, volume on max, and imagine you're playing it for the first time. All of a sudden, you're that hopeless soldier in the bunker, scared, afraid, alone. I'm going to try to sell this map as if it were an advert. If you're new to zombies and want to get into the game mode, then this is the map for you. No more confusing quest steps or long, laborious, tiresome map layouts. Just turn on the power, grab your weapons, and go! I want to provide an altruistic defense of this map, as it's received some unjust criticism due to its elementary nature. Yeah, no kidding, it's a basic map. It's the map that most people started out with back in 2010. This map is dripping with nostalgia, and even a new player in 2024 will able to learn the ropes on this map with ease. I think we underappreciate the design nuances that make this map great for beginners. The starting room is big, but can easily fill up with the undead as the rounds progress. The wall weapons are available and proficient, with the PM63 and the MP40 on one side, and the MPL and the AK-74U on the other. Dogs arrive to keep the players on their toes, and the stage is a great area for new players to grasp zombie movement in greater numbers. We all know a player that is extremely proficient in Call of Duty multiplayer, but becomes a hilarious novice when thrust into the zombies mode. They can accurately shoot the zombies, but they're inept at kiting and predicting the zombie movement, which leads to down after down after down. Kino is the perfect bridging of these multiplayer zombie gaps. I especially recommend playing this with a new player and seeing how they get on. The experienced player can guide them through the stage, and once there, allow them to try and train the zombies on their own. It's a fascinating endeavour, and could only really exist on a map like Kino. Now, I will discuss the elephant in the room, which is that Kino suffers when the players progress past this skill level. Once a player can sufficiently train, playing Kino over and over is like staying in boot camp, consistently perfecting the firing range. At some point, you've got to stop knifing the watermelon. Is there enjoyment to be had for experienced players on Kino? Perhaps. The alleyway and MP40 room can certainly prove challenging to train on, and you're always welcome to try user-created challenges such as no power challenge, or all guns pack-a-punched, or pistol and knife only. However, I think it would be foolish to assume that these challenges were intended from the design of the map itself. The map is a very well-designed combat training ground. You arrive as a fresh-faced young soldier with hopes of achieving the high ranks as you learn the ropes and find out what it's like to be a COD Zombies expert. Many players have sought Kino as their nexus point, their genesis, their ground zero. Kino isn't a place to stay, however. It is a place to leave. The show will eventually end, so grab your ticket, enjoy the performance, and please use the exits provided. I could review this map in a single sentence. If 9 was on the Black Ops 3 engine and part of the Ether storyline, it would be a top 5 map. Enough said. 9 has an intense atmosphere, an adequate wonder weapon, killer Easter egg, and an epic, awe-inspiring thematic presentation. However, the things that drag it down are the persistent problems that plague Black Ops 4 Zombies, which is the bloating of features and special zombies coupled with the increased speed of the later rounds. The typical structure of a zombies game goes as follows. Obtain high power weaponry, collect various equipment to aid in survival, buff out with perks, and, most crucially, scout out a sufficient training spot or camping strategy. Now, as someone who adheres to training, as I find camping to be an exploit in the game's style and mechanics, this map offers me little in the high rounds. When I booted up this map, I was so excited. It's a thrilling and intoxicating environment, being in the Colosseum with the crowd cheering or booing you on. You adventure into the 4 statues fighting all gladiators and tigers, only to delve deeper into the Gothic and Templar undercroft where Pack-a-Punch looms. It harkens back to the days of Tomb Raider, where the adventure elements are baked into the gameplay and story. Unfortunately, once this cycle is over, you're met with unnecessary obstacles that inhibit an enjoyable high-round experience. The fire in the main arena is straight up awful, and has got me killed so many times than I dare to admit. The tigers are obnoxiously animated, and the gladiators spawn way too much for mid-round gameplay. For a boss that's already got its own round, the gladiators are a perfect example of a boss that outstays its welcome, much like the swamp monster from Zetsubou. Is it that Black Ops 4 simply caters more to the camping player rather than the training player? Who knows? Perks like Victorious Tortoise and Stone Cold Stronghold certainly seem to solidify this theory. All I can say is Black Ops 4 works in some elements, but fails in others, unfortunately. When the movement of the zombies is the thing that fails, it kind of seeps into every aspect of play in the higher rounds. 9 is kind of like a gladiatorial fight, exciting and thrilling for the early game, but if gone too long, just makes you want to throw in the towel. Here we have a masterclass in deception, in how to draw in a player with its enticing premise and arsenal of weapons, and simultaneously ruin it with some of the most frustrating design decisions in all of Zombies. What's enticing about this map? The exciting start in No Man's Land. The sci-fi weaponry, the ability to float around in space, the endless abilities of the hacker and the chance to gain quick revive and Juggernog before round 1. What a sales pitch! However, the excited player quickly realises that those elements are plagued with caveats and contrivances. The floating ability also applies to zombies, which makes their pathing harder to predict. The hacker is useful, but only at the expense of your breathing apparatus. And the early perks are a disaster waiting to happen, since there is a boss on this map so haphazardly implemented it might as well be a joke. The astronaut can suck you in, World at War DeRee style, on a map where mobility is already an issue, but if that wasn't enough, the astronaut takes away a perk, usually the one that you have to go back to Area 51 multiple times to get back. Here is the crux of Moon. The challenge aspects of the map only serve to unfairly punish the player for the slightest of errors. There is no strategy in avoiding these elements. If the excavator decides to come and destroy the map, a confusing addition by the way, then you're forced into a dead-end corner of the spawn room where your route is blocked without oxygen, meaning your use of the hacker is limited. The developmental maps found in Black Ops 1 persist with these limiting elements. They dangle the carrot of overpowered weapons and tools in front of you, only for the carrot to be on the other side of a lava pit with a dangerous parkour circuit between you and it. Sometimes Zombies needs to stay casual, especially in these early maps, and the obnoxious implementation of artificial challenge only strengthens my assumption that the Black Ops 1 maps, and indeed Moon, posit an abusive mockery towards the player, without the horror elements that made World at War so special. Moon, quite frankly, is a deflating experience that will take your breath away for all the wrong reasons. Verrukt exists on the careful boundary between casual mayhem and nightmarish terror. There is something to be said about the sheer effectiveness of World at War's style and sensibilities. The way it commits to a desolate, melancholic dread etched with echoes of despair, pain, suffering and bloodshed. It's been a long time since 10-year-old me was even scared to face the World at War starting menu music, let alone my friends to start up a brutal mental torture that was a full match of Nazi zombies. Luckily, I only experienced this with Nacht Der Untoten. Verrukt was met later, through teenage years, yet the map still had a weird note of creepiness and fascination, awe and apprehension, eeriness and intrigue. I found myself staring out of the fire-cracked woods, imagining my grand escape from the asylum, with zombies chasing my ever-growing escape. It's amazing how this map can ignite the imagination from its simplicity. Functionally, this map is deeper than Nacht, providing essential abilities from increased health, faster reloads, and an increased rate of fire. I cannot tell you how grateful you are of these abilities when you first receive them. It's something that is seldom appreciated when it comes to Verrukt. You know that feeling when you buy Jug? That relief, the sanctuary, the power and security, knowing that you can take those few extra hits? You can thank Verrukt for that. Now, does the inception of perks increase Verrukt's merit as an experience? I would argue yes, but I see why people would disagree. Perks are required on this map due to the map's claustrophobic layout and ruthless zombie speed. Players are in for a psychologically torturous experience, especially playing on the World at War version. Zombies appear left, right and centre, screaming at you, whilst your arsenal of unpack-a-punch weaponry grows ever more useless. despite this map's age, it is still possible to train on this map. Just about. Zombies can be looped around in the Thompson room with difficulty, but an experienced player is able to manage that into the high rounds. The lack of wonder weapons apart from the ray gun, however, is an absence that is sorely felt. And no, I don't count the Winter's Howl because A, that's on the Black Ops 1 version, and B, it's horrible. The weapons are enough, but they grow tiresome after multiple playthroughs. I can't fault the map due to its age and its elementary nature. I can fault it for its lacking arsenal of equipment. Nacht introduced the ray gun, and Shi No Numa the Wunderwaffe. Verrukt is simply just mad. I have such fond memories of Town. My first zombie map was Nacht Der Untoten, and it remained that way for a number of years. Nacht was my only experience of zombies for ages, until I was playing an extremely dark, blurry version of 5 on my friend's TV. It wasn't until Town that I realised what zombies had become, how much deeper the zombie mode was, how to train, how to maximise points, early round strategies, and settling into a late game with the best weapons to survive the most amount of rounds. Town is that perfect introductory experience. The objective of Pack-a-Punch is dangled like a carrot on entry, and the player is immediately faced with a strategy. Do I go straight for the main objective of a weapon upgrade, or do I gain perks and weapons first? For what is essentially a cut and paste map design, Town is surprisingly replayable, and is easily the best offering that Green Run presents. It's a shame, really, that the map TranZit could have felt more like Town in terms of its rudimentary sparseness. I can't complain, however. Town still remains to be a great visit. It doesn't insist, it simply persists as a pillar of where we all came from. I would like to take a minute to praise Die Rise for what it does right, and then you can make up your own mind on its quality. Many people cite Die Rise as one of the worst maps ever created. I would urge you to answer the question of what makes a terrible zombies experience. Tedious mechanics? Many maps require tedium in nature, with Die Rise being one of them. However, tedium can translate to rewarding once the task has been achieved. Lackluster wonder weapons, perhaps? Well, the Soliquifier is one of the most powerful wonder weapons available, and even post-patch you can launch your way into the late rounds. How about restrictive areas of gameplay? Die Rise offers more training and camping areas than any other map. What Die Rise offers is a playground of debris, a wonderland of rotated madness. The many issues that players seem to have with Die Rise is due to its engine and its archaic release time. Black Ops 2 was an era of experimentation, of change and innovation. It often confuses me when TranZit is ranked higher than Die Rise, when the latter keeps a lot of what makes zombies great. To an extent, celebrates it. Die Rise can be played run and gun, camping, training, being launched across buildings, laterally in the elevators, and high round. There's a lot of variety in Die Rise, which is commendable considering its era of development. My only critiques are the Easter egg and Who's Who. Easter eggs in this era of zombies were frustratingly dull, and operated on a fetch quest style linear narrative which often makes the player question the legitimacy of their own actions. Also, with the Easter egg being beatable in 5 minutes in some cases, and the reliance on RNG from the mystery box, this egg doesn't even come close to even being finished, let alone being one of the greats. Additionally, Who's Who remains to be a poorly optimised perk despite having a useful premise. Black Ops 2 attempted to change the revive mechanics in 3 consecutive maps, first with Tombstone, second with Who's Who, and third with Afterlife mode. These all garnered mixed results, with Who's Who being received the worst. It was a time where the developers were fixing problems that didn't need to be fixed. Quick revive was a stable mechanic, and it worked well, not to mention already in the map of Die Rise. But if you're one of the people who shun this map, I want you to take a good hard look at why you hate the map. Is it an opinion brought upon by yourself or by others? If you identify with the latter, then give this map a go. Take the leap and enjoy the fall. Never before has a map felt so humble, yet so cocky in its attitude. In 2010, Zombies was faced with a set of twins in the form of Kino Der Toten and 5. One was mild-mannered, easy to get along with, and was more in the spirit of having fun rather than competitiveness. The other, however, was loud, aggressive, brutally unfair when playing any kind of game, and knocked you down at any turn. This evil twin dynamic was essential to the development of Zombies. 5 might not seem like an innovation, but to me the map was a turning point in the attitude towards challenge and concept. No longer was Zombies simply tied to the World War II aesthetics in a casual setting where survival is the only objective. 5 requires strategy, coordination, resilience, adaptability, lightning-fast maneuvering, and a deep understanding of the layout. This preparation serves to tackle the Pentagon Thief, which, despite 5's age, still remains to be one of the most dynamic and interesting bosses in Zombies, period. Instead of a generic horde-like enemy that simply acts like a different type of zombie, the Thief offers layers to its interaction and reward system. The player prior to the Thief's arrival must carefully consider their arsenal of weapons, making sacrifices or gearing up to face the Thief head-on, for a chance to get the ever-elusive bonfire sale. It's a real shame because once this boss is mastered, 5 falls back into the typical rhythms of a normal World at War map. Which, need I remind you, is never a bad thing. 5, just like Verrukt that came before it, is challenging due to its layout and map design. The War Room is the only feasible training area, with the labs and offices being far too restricted for sufficient zombie kiting. However, despite its archaic nature, 5 represents more than the sum of its parts. It represents an expansion of what Zombies was allowed to do. You simply cannot imagine this map in World at War. It is a definite and deliberate progression, and a step into the unknown. For this, I can find true merit in 5, and even if the map is 14 years old as of this video, it's still mighty replayable due to its challenging nature. I rarely seem to face the apathetic boredom I receive with some of the older maps. We all know that feeling, of jumping onto classic Zombies only to realise that our minds have adapted to a newer, more saturated form of gameplay. It's only a matter of time before we get bored and end the game prematurely. 5 seldom holds this issue. Much like the Pentagon itself, we require its brutal philosophy for security and our capacity to retaliate. When it sounds like someone's breaking in, gentlemen, lock and load. Ascension exists in a strange no man's land in Zombies development. The maps that preceded it are basic in nature, with the exception of 5. The maps that followed Ascension were swept away in the whirlwind of expanding features and additions, which has left Ascension as the middle child. It's not too complex to be considered one of the greats, yet it doesn't lend itself to being the characteristics of classic Zombies. The dripping nostalgia for this map is granted to it due to its ease of accessibility, yet exhibits advanced tedium that is reminiscent of maps like Moon or TranZit. When experiencing Ascension, the player will progress through early rounds with ease, with only the strange movement of combat rolling zombies to be the only challenge. The map uses space to empower the player so much that you are able to kite them around in many different areas. However, the map then suffers in its challenge scale once the power is turned on. The game plays out with pockets of stress and overwhelm in the form of monkey rounds, interspersed with somewhat passive yet mildly engaging training in other parts. The dichotomy is the flow of the high strategy of Ascension, and while you can get used to it, after a while you start to question the design choices of the monkeys as less of a threat and more of a nuisance. It's the equivalent of taking out the bins or unloading the dishwasher, as in, oh, here we go, another monkey round. Furthermore, the incrementing health on the monkeys does not scale in difficulty, as it plateaus around round 30, but exists in bafflement to the player, like, why does a tiny little monkey have this much health? I would describe Ascension in a word, necessary. A necessary stepping stone in the development of Zombies, but also a necessary experience for any player. It will teach you what makes Zombies great, and what makes Zombies annoying. Never before has a zombie map felt like more of a playground than this one. Buried creates its identity through its sandbox elements, encouraging the player to play how they please. Place your weapons where you want. Build 4 items on any table with all the parts in a convenient trade shop. There's even a big dumb assistant to aid in leaving the box where you want, leaving the last zombie, being a trap, accessing areas, basically anything your heart desires. Use the bank to get ahead for a few rounds, or, well, screw it. Turn the game on God mode and collect 10,000 points. This is a zombie map for elementary players who want to play around with the mechanics in a safe yet dynamic environment. Much like Kino, Buried provides a good foundation for the starting player. The starting room is narrow but manageable, with the M14 allowing a new player to grasp how zombies' health incrementation works. They might even be brave enough to grab the LSAT warbie on the way down. Once the player reaches the map, there is very little in the way of buyable doors. This means a player who isn't used to zombie movement can easily kite zombies around in the early rounds. Although zombie spawns are sporadic, with many of them rising from the ground, they're predictable, and there is always a route away from the zombies. Beginners are also given a soft introduction to quests, with the addition of Leroy, who is able to break down doors and even provide secret portals back to the spawn room. The Witch's House provides much needed excitement and panic, and the maze is a good test of the player's beginner's skill to think on their feet and plan ahead. Now, I've been playing zombies for over 10 years, so how does this map cater for the experienced players? Well, apart from the Easter egg, it doesn't. The equipment and perks available on this map are simply too overpowered and clearly designed to provide safety for novice players learning the ropes of zombies. Once said ropes are learnt, there is little challenge found in this map that isn't intrinsic to the player. In my playthrough, I'd pack-a-punched about 7 weapons and got all 7 perks from the witches by round 16, at which point I found no incentive to keep playing. The dichotomy of every barrier broken by Leroy giving you points, weapon chalks providing 1,000 or even 2,000 points every time, and having very little in the way of necessary doors opened, you'll find yourself with an over-surplus of points which players have little need for. I find the setting of a western town to be the biggest piece of irony in this regard. To my knowledge, the Wild West was a vicious, brutal, cutthroat era of history, with many dangerous characters lurking in the shadows. Buried feels more like Frontierland at Disney World, Florida. A very safe and pleasant environment for visitors to traverse and maybe experience a thrill or two. I mean, for God's sake, there's a goddamn candy shop. This map isn't a cowboy showdown. It's Back to the Future 3. Shangri-La might as well exist as its own game mode. It is so separate from the typical flow and conventions of a regular zombies map that it's almost generated its own isolated community because of it. And that's why I love it. Everything you know about zombies was thrown out of the window with Shang. From the map layout to the enemy design, you have to rewire your brain to truly maximize the potential that this map offers. And that's without talking about the difficulty. My relationship with zombies difficulty is a weird one. It needs to strike a balance between casual automata and challenging engagement. Shangri-La is a hard zombie map, borderline unfair. There are reasons to believe that this map can suffer due to its poor balancing in terms of empowerment of the player, because all the elements seem to be working against you from the very beginning. The tight layout, the shrieker zombies, the fire zombies, monkeys that steal power-ups, traps in the doorways, the mud trap puzzle, dead-end corridors, and oh god, why are there random perks returning? Why? However, a proactive player notices that these elements can serve in favour of the player. Monkeys can provide max ammos or even perk drops. Fire zombies can provide a helpful trap. The traps in the doorways slow down the zombies as well. If a smart player is able to utilise these functions, it makes for a stellar experience. Additionally, this is one of the few maps in the series to adapt to the Mustang and Sally PhD strategy perfectly, as the tight layout necessitates the fast movement and explosive immunity. However, aesthetics is where the map truly shines. I'd be hard-pressed to find a map that is as beautiful as this. Its beauty really captures a kind of rebellion. A deliberate diversion from the horror and gore overlay that zombies seems to adopt most of the time. It's a truly mesmerising map. Unfortunately, it fails to live up to modern zombie standards in terms of goal orientation and structure. High rounds are fun, but seldom achieved due to the map's hefty skill gap. If you want adventure, then look no further. But Just don't be surprised when the boulders start rolling. The art of reference can be a labour of love or a passive task of apathy. It can be easy to pass off a rewritten idea as a referent intended to inspire reflection and reward old investors for their time and dedication. The more cynical among us may criticise and shun the art of the callback, but it proves necessary in providing artistic cohesion within a long-term franchise, especially one as lucrative and prevalent as the Call of Duty Zombies mode. Many maps in the franchise have used Easter eggs and gameplay elements to self-reference themselves. Common examples include the return of the 4 original characters in Origins, the hidden cornfield edition of Nacht in TranZit, and the teasing of PhD Flopper and Mulekick in Die Rise and Mob of the Dead. However, by the time the franchise had reached its 7-year tenure in Black Ops 3, the mode, despite reaching staggering production values, was a victim of the creatively bankrupt. It is with regret that Der Eisendrache, despite having great gameplay options available, is the worst offender in the trend of callback over innovation. Whether it was unfortunately a necessity for the story or a loving attempt at rewarding the commitment of long-term fans, the core gameplay elements of Der Eisendrache are a mosaic of mechanics plundered from previous installments. And the annoying thing is, it all works. The bows are fantastically powerful and are easier and less tedious to craft than the staffs from Origins. The anti-gravity room offers a different style of manoeuvring which is refreshing and playful. The Easter egg was a storyline phenomenon at the time of release and still offers a genuine challenge with the Keeper boss fight. Der Eisendrache is a triumph in how to make a zombie map right. I'd like to imagine a world where you could take a Call of Duty course in university, a course I'm sure would fill up faster than a pint glass on payday. And on this course, the main project would be to design an entire zombie map from scratch. If someone were to hand in a Der Eisendrache, they'd get full marks for sure. It would fulfill all the criteria. But I don't want that. Sometimes the favourite map is not the one that ticks all the boxes. To me, Der Eisendrache is completely devoid of character and is a barren hole of creativity. It plays it entirely safe from the wonder weapon design to the bosses to the setting and the characters. It's almost too perfect. It's the teacher's pet. I have little respect for a map that was designed to please everybody. Even though I know that Der Eisendrache had real passion behind it. This feels less like an actual medieval castle and more like a museum. A showcase for COD Zombies as a franchise. A best of CD. Now that's what I call zombies. I struggle with Shadows of Evil. Not in terms of difficulty, but in evaluation. It is a masterful experience in one respect. The aesthetics and style are unmatched by any other map, and its commitment to its concept is incredibly admirable. Behind every corner there are subtle nods to the deeper storyline and the timepiece of the Roaring Twenties. Jazz music as round changes, characters shrouded in mystery, and custom perk jingles as a cherry on top. The Cthulhu elements are less pronounced in terms of grace and implementation, but they are intriguing nonetheless. The Shadow Man creates a captivating aura of dread, the way he lurks around each corner, flashes in the corner of your eye like a horror film. You tend to perform double takes in this map. Was the Shadow Man there, or was it just my imagination? However, I mentioned in the Der Eisendrache section that Treyarch was obsessed with reference at this point in the Zombies development, reusing and nodding to the past in an attempt to resurrect the magic of the previous maps. There is a philosophy of complacency in this game, whereby the attitude is, well, if it worked once, it'll work twice. There's little risk involved, which isn't itself a bad thing. Shadows has a satisfying progression through the areas and adheres to an explorative playstyle, allowing all areas of the map to be utilised. It also has a fun beast mode mechanic, allowing for fast parkour style gameplay and time attack elements to maximise the ability. It all just sounds too familiar though. The exploration style objectives were done in Origins, the beast mode is simply afterlife mode from Mob of the Dead. When a map borrows from another map, it creates a disconnect in immersion. Full dedication of a player's attention can only be achieved if they feel like they're being swept away by the experience. When previous elements are brought back, it feels like I'm being taken out of the map in order to remember better memories of other maps. There is a way to do this tastefully, and Shadows definitely rides this line. Additionally, the layout of this map is often praised, and I'm unsure of the outstanding merit of the spoked wheel layout found in Shi No Numa. The layout is good in theory, but ends up abandoning a central hub area that feels significant in some way. A hub area should be an area of gameplay significance, somewhere the player will always venture back to, like the dig site on Origins or the stage on Kino. In Shadows, the hub is simply a necessity to connect all the areas together, with little agency over the player's decisions. There's a lot of fun to be had in Shadows of Evil. With it being a launch map for Black Ops 3, this map was favoured by many, with it being cited as the very pinnacle of Zombies experience. Need I remind you, however, this map was not loved by many on launch, with many casual players fleeing to the Giant for the quintessential classic experience. The map requires a lot of knowledge, which is satisfying to master, yet when mastered feels tacked on and laborious to deal with every match. The gameplay doesn't allow for much variety. Although you can complete the rituals in any order, they're all in the same concept and in execution. Bloated is how I would describe this map, in concept and in ludology. Black Ops 4 was controversial, to say the least. Time has treated the game with grace, but no one can deny the indelible mark it left on the franchise. In 2018, fans were expecting a development and refinement of the almost near-perfect mechanics and game loops found in Black Ops 3, but instead were met with radical shifts in the game's core identity, which made the mode feel distant to the greatness it once held. I was in this camp at launch. I didn't get the new perk system. I hated the new health mechanics, and the zombies were, and still are, too fast on high rounds. When evaluating Black Ops 4 in retrospect, many cite one map as the diamond in the rough, the exception to the rule. I believe this map gives sense to the changes that Jason Blundell introduced. It is a safe haven. Ancient Evil is not this map, which I'm sure surprises people since the map is constantly in the top 5 of everyone's greatest maps of all time list. I am not in the majority here when I say that Ancient Evil doesn't really work for me. It took me a while to figure out why, since I always admired the map at launch due to its visuals, which are top tier. The city of Delphi is so clean and regal, and doesn't suffer from the mucky and bloody aesthetic that many previous maps tend to overly indulge in. The problems lie in the repetitive cinematics and the lackluster implementation of ideas that have already been better utilised in previous maps. Every game involves a Sentinel artifact cutscene, a Giganese encounter, a Pegasus cutscene, and 4 Gauntlet demos that just take way too long. I just find it tedious that the game shows you how to use a wonder weapon every time you launch the map. First time? Yeah, sure, but not every single time. It would be like if you got the Thunder Gun on Kino and it forced you into Samantha's room and she asked you to blast away a bunch of zombies before you can return to the map. It eliminates the element of wonder weapon discovery that made the earlier maps so special. The map just can't decide whether it wants to be hand-holdy or oppressively tedious. I never want to spend another moment looking for dormant hands. The fact that there are 20 locations and they are so hard to find is bad enough, but some of the clues given by the Oracle are just far too cryptic. You have to look up the locations multiple times during gameplay, which is bad, considering it's the first step in acquiring the wonder weapon. I don't want this map review to turn into just a rant of my frustration with the map, just because I think, despite its flaws, Ancient Evil is actually a good map. The shield is creative and useful. The wonder weapons, although tedious to build, are fun and interesting. The Pegasus strike is extremely powerful, and the Easter egg is unique and more skill-based rather than puzzle-based. I simply struggle to understand the pedestal this map has been placed on. This map came out after 4 polarizing maps on a drastically altered engine, and one map that, while brilliant, was poorly marketed and had no story significance. This map exists as an artifact, something that was necessary to save the community's faith in the mode, but ultimately served as a quick win, a short stint at glory for a city of barbaric fools. Ancient Evil glorifies the lost civilization and attempts to resurrect its broken philosophies, but only lies broken and sinking into the earth. The fall of Stalingrad, in retrospect, has maintained a sombre melancholy when it comes to Call of Duty's representation of the battle. In the mission Vendetta, we see a fallen Stalingrad where Reznov is guiding our protagonist through a desolate, corpse-filled German-occupied wasteland. It's a respectful and ambient mission that, despite having its narrative objectives rooted in military valour, it manages to convey a chilling yet intriguing liminal atmosphere which still creeps me out to this day. Then why am I talking about a World at War mission rather than Gorod Krovi? Well, by 2016, Call of Duty returns to Stalingrad, not with subtle narrative dread, but with bombast and bloat. Despite offering more in terms of gameplay, story, and sheer spectacle, the aesthetics of Gorod Krovi is simply window dressing for the exhaustion of the formulaic structure designed by Jason Blundell. The map is more simplistic than its other Black Ops 3 counterparts, but it was at this point that the predictability of the quest-style zombie map had grown stale, and would eventually reach its apex in the subsequent map Revelations. There exists a downward arc, a negative hype correlation with the Black Ops 3 lifecycle, as if with each map release, the game relies more on referencing and nostalgia rather than innovative game design. The map seems to shrink in terms of features every time I play it, which is strange since I'm generally an admirer of this map in a lot of ways. The lockdown sections are tense, the gauntlet is fun, the Raygun Mark III is unique, and the Easter egg is one of the most delightfully stressful experiences I've ever gone through. In isolation, Gorod Krovi is an excellent offering to the player who wishes to expand their quest repertoire. However, I can't shake the feeling that Gorod Krovi marks the end of an era, an adherence to more of the same, a cliff face where profit overtook innovation. Not by much at first, but we would reach an all-time low in Black Ops 4. In essence, Gorod is a fun map, but not without its markers of being derivative. The map remains to be too much and too little at the same time. If that makes you depressed, then there's only one thing for it. Say hello to vodka! It staggers me that a map can be so archaic in its elements, and yet has aged so well. It is a common argument amongst the zombies community to compare a certain map's appreciation to fine wine. This comparison is typically applied to maps like Shangri-La or Zetsubou No Shima, maps that receive criticism on release, yet with time have found merit among zombies fans. I would compare those aforementioned maps more to an aged whiskey, too strong to be appreciated in its infancy, yet with age has found new flavour and depth. Reise is not like a fine wine or whiskey, but more like Dark Side of the Moon or Sgt. Pepper's, revolutionary in its day and is a classic and rich experience in the modern day. Sure, the original cut in the record has some pops and squeaks, the Wonderwaff jug glitch and Black Hole Zombies being notable examples. However, there are remasters and remixes available for the sound to be appreciated through a modern lens. The Black Ops 1 version fixes a lot of the bugs and glitches present in the original version, and is even faithful to the old World War II weapons being on the wall. This map, at its core, is classic zombies at its best. A bombastic, intense rollercoaster ride that pertains to many different types of playstyles. Training was introduced in Shi No Numa, but arguably perfected on this map. The STG room, Thompson room and starting room having more than enough surface area for satisfying zombie loops to stretch gameplay into the hour or 2 hour mark. There is one strategy that has retained all mythos in the zombies community, the catwalk. Now, although being a bit stale, this strategy is as effective as it is iconic. The strategy follows typical funneling of the zombies as they pile into this small area. However, the player slowly begins to notice their depleting ammo situation, which is where a mad dash occurs to desperately buy more ammo from the wall or hit the mystery box for more firepower. It's an absolute thrill. Many would argue that Reise is too simplistic, too old, too outdated for all practicality. But when it comes to the essence, the soul of COD Zombies, nothing delivers this better than Reise. Call of the Dead marks the introduction of a fair and just challenge into the zombie map roster. By now, we'd seen a selection of small, easy maps, small difficult maps that some people consider unfair, and large maps with artificial difficulty in the form of boss rounds. Now we see that the Zombies team are taking its approach to challenge in a new direction. The map is large and expansive with many winding routes and avenues to take. There are a few large training areas, but these aren't to be taken too carelessly thanks to the addition of George Romero. Many admirers of this map cite George as their only gripe, the Achilles heel of what holds the map back from achieving greatness. I fall somewhere in the middle. While George is frustrating to deal with and likens to a bad smell that won't leave you alone, he provides a sense of tension and strategy that doesn't exist on any other Zombies map besides maybe Buried with the addition of Leroy. Even then, Leroy exists as a passive entity used to aid the player, whereas George is entirely hostile. He will explode with rage at the slightest loose bullet. He runs at you with dazzling speed and stuns and slows you as he curses your name. This intensity does come with some frustrations though. After about round 15, I started to get sloppy and was wishing for a more casual experience that George just simply doesn't cater for. The rounds where George is gone and you're left to enjoy the free perk and the death machine are pure bliss. Black Ops 1 and chill at its finest. But you're always conscious of the looming dread that comes back like a turd that won't flush. Coupled with Deadshot Daiquiri being an underwhelming perk addition, and the map just turns into a confusing juxtaposition of genius concepts meshed with tiresome mechanics. There is a note, however, that the times where I died in this map, I knew it was my own wrongdoing, which is something that Jason Blundell states in his evaluation of what makes a well-designed zombie map. When TranZit floods with zombies and denizens and fog and lava and crappy weapons, it leaves the player thinking, well, what was I supposed to do? Call of the Dead never produces such expletives. It feels like a challenge. A cold, harsh wasteland that will test you and leave you chilled to the bone. But if you're resilient and tactful, you're simply the coolest. Quest-style maps in 2016 had become a tried and true formula. You spawn into the map, you know exactly the journey you will undertake to progress through the map. Whether it be tedious or challenging, you know what has to be done, and your task is as follows: complete X, receive Y. It's not surprising then that upon Zetsubou No Shima's release, the Zombies community was a little frosty on the idea of committing to more tutorials and fetch quests in order to unlock the most basic elements in a Zombies match. Following the smash hit of Der Eisendrache, it was easy to see why Zetsubou took the fall. It was a tall order of a map. What hindsight has revealed, however, is nothing short of a masterpiece in progression and emotion. Much like Origins before it, Zetsubou encourages the player to scavenge and collect in order to manipulate the machinery and magic before them. You feel like a scientist, a rogue collector on his way to seek revenge on this wretched land. Each quest is presented with an air of mystery, as if the parts collected were scattered in a way that uncovers a darker story sown in the island's past. The weaponry is ramshackle and battered, which highlights the aesthetic plant-based horror. There's always been something disturbing about the dominance of nature, and how it heartlessly overpowers anything in its path. Yet you, as the player, find the power within the horror, and use it to free a beloved character from an ancient curse. This kind of serious, somber commitment to an aesthetic had never been previously seen. Zombies was always seen as gimmicky and light. Even on maps like Origins and Der Eisendrache, the bombast was always erring on the side of ironic detachment, like the presentations of these ridiculous elements were in service of fun rather than emotion. Zetsubou was the first instance of this thematic shift. Suddenly, the game mode broke new ground, in being a serious, emotional, and tender story of a Japanese soldier saved from turmoil. Many maps in the Zombies canon have been shunned by the community, often regarding them with disdain or ignorance. Often these come from the alternative zombie offerings of Infinite Warfare or Vanguard, but occasionally they fall on Treyarch's shoulders. They're usually clowned upon and given meme status, with Rise and TranZit being strong contenders. These are the punching bags of the zombie community. Sometimes these opinions are slightly misinformed. Maybe they were searching for quality in the wrong places. or simply didn't even give the map a chance. Good lord, was I surprised with Dead of the Night. In January 2019, I played this map, and it was fine. I liked the setting, I disliked the characters, and I was neutral on pretty much everything else. In 2024, I revisited it, and I went nuts. I just completed everything for the satisfaction of completing it, simply because it was there. This map is the perfect example of build it and they will come. The satisfaction of completing everything there is to offer on a map is directly applicable to the gameplay loops of Origins, Zetsubou, and Mob of the Dead. But Dead of the Night arguably does it better. First, once you learn the structure and layout of this map, you won't get lost. Black Ops 4 has a handy feature where it tells you which room you're in every time you play, and every room is unique and vibrant. More importantly, however, every room serves a function in the game. No area is left unutilized. Secondly, the quests in this map are such a fun time. The act of collecting in Zombies is a process that's underrated in terms of its development. It started its infancy in Moon, where players could collect a certain item or ability to upgrade their kit. In Dead of the Night, this is taken to the nth degree. Knowledge and skill is what this map requires. If you can minimize the amount of time taken between each process, then you will become a god at traversing this haunted mansion. Thirdly, the wonder weapon, the Alistair's Annihilator, is grossly overlooked. It is one of the most powerful offerings in all of Zombies. Not to mention, it has one of the best quests to unlock it. I need to be careful here because I don't want to absolve Dead of the Night of criticism because of its novelty and obscurity. I'll be the first person to mention that placing it in the top 3 is a little rich. My biases are in full force here. However, I cannot deny the sheer surprise and bafflement that Dead of the Night reveals in me. As we've established in this list, I'm definitely a sucker for defined aesthetics and cohesive visuals. Dead of the Night, with its Baroque designs, high-class statues and bedrooms, refined topography, the intricate designs of the furniture that just makes you feel so welcome, like this is your own house to explore, tucked away in a forest that nobody has ever seen. If you happen to stumble across this mansion on your travels, then do drop by. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The shift that Zombies took with Jason Blundell's lead was a dramatic one. Zombies was originally a game mode about silly survival, where the randomness of the maps were congruent to the lack of self-seriousness the mode possessed as a whole. The maps were springboards for wacky ideas that tested the sandbox of Call of Duty itself, and tested the player on the endurance of sanity. After the release of Mob, however, Zombies became more Hollywood, which I'm not criticising. Zombies all of a sudden had the feel of a bigger budget, higher production value, higher attention to detail. The map no longer felt like an Easter egg mode that was stitched together from the woodwork of previous assets. It felt like a separate game, a mode to be taken seriously. Mob of the Dead takes the zombie formula and flips it like a pancake. From the span of a single map, we went from reused assets, archaic item carrying, and stagnant sound effects, to an experience that might as well have been its own AAA title. In 2013, when this map came out, it was almost suspicious how well made this map was. Every thought was, no, this can't be the Zombies team. They use reused assets and static Samantha models. From the music, sound effects, dynamic lighting, mystery elements, Ludo story integration, the map is pure cinema. The lore and character development alone is akin to the Shawshank Redemption, and that's before even mentioning the gameplay. Mob could have fallen into the trap of style over substance so easily, yet every playthrough seems to be exciting and tense. This map requires the gun skill and maneuverability of Shangri-La and Verrukt, coupled with the knowledge and commitment of Origins and even Moon. But I think comparing this map to other maps is robbing the map of its personality, because I don't think we've had a single map like this since, or even prior. The map is difficult, but offers just the right amount of tools and weaponry to manage the tight layout. My favourite mechanic is the quest for Jug at the start of the game. It's a careful and gripping escalation of point management and rising tension as the zombies get stronger and faster. The fact that it's basically on the other side of the map creates a strong objective for the player. The map is littered with memorable moments that make the plane building process novel and fresh every time. The mad dash to the bottom of the spiral staircase, defending the laundry room, zapping the machines in the engine room, the coordination of collecting the gas canisters on co-op. It's all masterful, and most importantly, deliberate. It's often to find a map that falls within a rocky stage of development to be so perfect in its execution and its delivery. The fact that so many elements are present here, and yet they all blend together so well, is truly a testament to the vision Blundell had on zombies going forward. Much like the gangsters on Alcatraz Island, the cycle was broken. There exists a moment in a franchise where the stars align and the development of a piece of media has reached the peak of its innovation. It's a space where the drafts and experiments in design have run their course, and all that's left is the craft of a team that have reached their golden era. From this oasis, they are destined to produce a masterpiece. Origins is that masterpiece. The scope of this map knows no bounds. It is a pinnacle of zombies mastery and a triumph of game design that balances fun and challenge better than any other experience. You start in a ramshackled bunker with mystery sci-fi machines converging into twisted blood and iron, freshly picked from the aesthetics of the World War I toy box. The doors from the spawn room reveal an expansive world of dynamic weather, tight corridors, dig piles to tactically gain an early advantage, and mysterious tunnels that venture into the unknown. As generators turn on, you gather just enough resources to explore no man's land, a desolate yet lucrative wasteland, where the excavation mound stands proud in the centre of the map like the towering objective that it represents. As generators 4 and 5 are initiated, the player makes a choice: Gen 6 or the main chamber. The tank station reveals an even more exploration, as if the map wasn't expansive enough, with a vehicle inside that harkens to the aesthetics of Mad Max Fury Road or Tatooine from A New Hope. Gen 6 is the dead-ended final stop, a symbol of the map switching gears, moving the player up a level in terms of skill, difficulty, and progression. Then we embark on the descent into the main chamber, where the map flips stylistically from realism to pure fantasy. The grandiosity found in the main chamber and in Agartha has an art style that has been recreated in countless subsequent maps, whether by pastiche or through narrative necessity. In my opinion, these imitators pale in comparison. Once the player has reached the crazy place, it feels like all bets are off. The solo has reached the apex, and the player is confirmed in their assumptions that Origins is an experience worthy of legend. From here, the progression of the map is masterful. It transforms the process of upgrading an arsenal from one of randomness and fetching into a complex web of puzzles and ciphers, rewarding the player's knowledge and dedication. The prize of this dedication is 4 of the most powerful and effective weapons the mode has ever offered, each one requiring a different skill set and play style. It's just as well, since the Panzer Soldat creates frantic moments of chaos, especially in the early game. Yet, if the player is skilled and well equipped, this behemoth becomes laughable in light of your wielded destructive capabilities. Finally, there's the Easter egg quest, which has been meticulously minimised by the speedrunning community to an extent that it's nothing short of superhuman. Origins, therefore, is the perfect blend of mud and magic. It shined above the parapet, spawning dozens of imitators, and has captured the hearts and minds of a generation of zombie fans. It was the marriage of classic zombie mechanics with the modern quest formula that has allowed this map endless replayability. Every journey starts with a single step. This is step 1.